Okay, so we're going to use the information that we just talked about to graph these things. We're going to do this by hand in Desmos. So the domain is going to be all real numbers, but remember we cannot divide by 0. So since we've got that x in the denominator, x cannot be 0. This means we have a vertical asymptote at x equals 0. Okay, so on the graph, we'll go ahead and draw that in. Nothing's going to happen at x equals 0. All right, the range. The range is this plus whatever, the tag along. I think if you had Mrs. Gilmore for Algebra 1, she called it the tag along. There's nothing out there. That's 0. Okay, so that means that our range is all real numbers except y can never be 0. Okay, there is nothing that you can plug in for x there that's going to have you get a 0 out of this. So that means we have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So here's y equals 0. And this provides the structure for our graph. Now, we still want to plug in some values, but we have a general idea of what this is going to look like already, so we don't have to plug in that many. You want to plug in numbers on either side of your vertical asymptote. So our vertical asymptote is 0. We know that that's undefined. There's not anything there. But we want to plug in maybe 2 numbers on this side of it and 2 numbers on this side of it. That's all. So when we plug in -2, 8 divided by -2 is -4. Plug in -1, we get -8. Plug in 1 and we get 8. Plug in 2, we get 4. So -2, -4, and -1, -8. Well, that doesn't even fit on here. 3, 6, 7, 8, down here. Okay? So you can see this is getting closer here, and it's also going to get closer in this direction. If you wanted, you could plug in another number. You could plug in -3 or -4, but it is going to go that direction. And we have 1, 8, 2, 4. So again, it's getting closer and closer this way and this way. And you'll notice the effect that the 8 had on it, as opposed to the graph that we did in the front, is these graphs are a little bit further away from the origin than the ones on the front page were. All right, let's take a look at the next one. We want to start with domain. Remember, we cannot divide by 0, so our domain is all real numbers except -3. So if you plug in -3, you're going to have 0 in the denominator. That means we have a vertical asymptote at -3. So let's draw that in. That is right here. Okay, we also need to look at our horizontal asymptote. Notice there's nothing out here again, so it's a +0. So our range is going to be all real numbers except y cannot be 0, which means we have a horizontal asymptote at 0. So again, this is going to provide us the structure. Notice our graph is just going to be shifted to the left a little bit. So we still want to set up a table of values. Our asymptote, our vertical asymptote, is at -3. So we know if we plug in -3, we can't do anything with that. I want to pick numbers close to that. Maybe 2 on this side and 2 on this side. Okay, this is how I get good points that I can plug in. So when we do that, just make that so I can see it better. I don't need that. So I plug in -5, and that's going to give me -1/2. Plug in -4, and that gives me -1. Of course, I can't plug in -3. That's not going to work. If I plug in -2, that gives me 1. If I plug in -1, that gives me 1/2. Okay, and you can always double check those on your calculator. I know I'm doing them kind of quickly in my head, but so let's graph these. -5, -1/2, -4, -1. And that's all we have over here. So we can kind of see it's coming in like this. And then -2, 1, and -1, 1/2. And you can see it looks like this. When you graph these, I always want you to plug in some additional points. Don't just you know, don't just tell me something like this. Once you figure out you have an asymptote here and here, don't just give me some sloppy stuff like, oh, it looks like that, okay? You need to have a few points that kind of anchors it so we have a good look at what this is.